Thank you. This question is around safeguarding concerns in direct provision. So in April, the Ombudsman for Children published its investigation, safety and welfare of children in direct provision, which found a range of child protection and welfare concerns, including staff members working in the centres had not been vetted to work with children, as well as a failure to report a serious child protection concern. So I'm just wondering what assurances you can give us that this is being addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy. Well, I welcomed the Ombudsman for Children's Office report and I accepted its recommendations in full. I received the report soon after responsibility for IPAS was transferred to my department, and the content of the report does make difficult reading. IPAS, the International Protection Accommodation Service of my department, has embarked on a series of actions planned for the short and medium term, which will build upon the existing work to ensure that the recommendations of the Ombudsman for Children will be implemented as quickly as possible. And I am encouraged by the comments of the Ombudsman himself, Niall Muldoon, regarding the cooperation and the measures taken by both IPAS and TUSLA since they received the report, and both agencies and my department will continue to work collaboratively with the Children's Ombudsman on this. The key priority will be moving all remaining children and families still residing in congregated hotel-style living to own door or independent living accommodation. And with this in mind, a new full public procurement will take place in 2021 with the aim of securing the additional spaces required to end the use of emergency accommodation by IPAS. And the procurement will have a specific focus on the provision of child-friendly accommodation that will allow parents and children enjoy a quiet and private family life. A new resident welfare team has been established within IPAS to manage the cases of individual families and single residents identified as having special reception needs, and to ensure that those needs continue to be identified and addressed in the most appropriate way possible. And the resident welfare team, it's a multidisciplinary team. It has social workers, it has experts from the fields of education, health and also of childcare. And IPAS is committed to working with TUSLA during 2021 to develop interagency protocols and operating procedures that ensures IPAS and TUSLA are sharing information on relevant cases. All existing and new centres will be required to develop a child safeguarding statement, and IPAS will work with TUSLA to ensure the compliance with child safeguarding statements and Children First legislation is audited this year. So I see the Ombudsman report as a significant contribution to promoting dignified and appropriate accommodation, and my department will continue to work with IPAS and TUSLA on this.
The Ombudsman report highlighted systematic faults in the direct provision system. It was unambiguous. It said the direct provision model, and I quote, does not have the best interests of children or the protection and promotion of the human rights of the child refugees at its core. We know many asylum seekers are more vulnerable due to language barriers, lack of social supports and the traumas of forced migration. There's an inherent kind of power imbalance between staff and residents, which are clear in the report, with one parent fearful to take legitimate complaints due to the risk of reprisals and weaponisation of child protection. So while we know, and I really welcome that you're committed to ending direct provision, I suppose we also know in reality that it will take years. So I wonder if you can guarantee that staff members in the centres will be vetted to work with children, and that they will be trained in child protection as well. Thank you.
Tara.
Well, the Ombudsman is absolutely right to highlight the inappropriateness of the direct provision system to deal with the needs of anybody, but particularly the needs of children, and that's why we brought forward the white paper to end direct provision, replace it with the new International Protection Support Service with all the wraparound supports that entails. As you say, that will take a number of years. It'll take until the end of 2024, and I've outlined some of the immediate actions that both IPAS and TUSLA are taking individually in their own spheres, but also I think importantly together, because that was one of the other findings that the Ombudsman for Children made, that the two bodies weren't talking to each other. And importantly, both bodies now come under my responsibility, and that will help to ensure that there is full cooperation between them both. And just to say, I think our introduction of the vulnerability assessment is really important in when somebody new comes into the international protection system, that we can immediately identify specific vulnerabilities they have and make provision for them in terms of the services we provide.
Thank you, Minister. Shakti Kearns.
I suppose it's a clear failure of previous governments and state agencies to oversee direct provision. So I'm wondering if you're working with the Minister for Justice as well to address the issues like International Protection Accommodation Service's failure to follow its own child protection and welfare policy. and what you're doing in response to TUSLA's failures in the report, including the failure to coordinate services to meet the needs of children in direct provision, and the failure to identify a named social worker for a direct provision centre in their area. I suppose just after our history of child abuse, especially in state-sponsored institutions, I think we'd all hope that the Departments of Justice and Children would work together to have the highest child protection practices. Unfortunately, it's not the case at the moment, but I'm glad you're working towards it, and we all support you in doing that. The Ombudsman report is a catalogue of failures to protect incredibly vulnerable young people, and keeping a kind of inhumane system going.
Mr. to conclude.
Thank you. Well, I suppose, to further development what's happening, additional child safety training is going to be rolled out to all centre managers during 2021 once the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. The child safeguarding statements will be translated into all relevant languages across all the centres as well, so people can obviously understand it immediately. I suppose in terms of the wider issue, and particularly issues that do fall within the remit of the Department of Justice in terms of the times for processing international protection applications, I'll be engaging with Minister Brown on that later on this week, and we'll be having a discussion on that, because as the point has been made by me and by NGOs, and particularly by people living in direct provision, it's only if we can get the processing times dramatically shortened that we can have real success in terms of the implementation of the white paper. So I'll be working closely with both Minister Brown now and also with Minister McEntee when she returns from leave.
I think Booker right.